Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, the show where aspiring and experienced matchmakers come to sharpen their skills, grow their businesses, and elevate the matchmaking industry. Your host is Arlene Washburn, an award-winning ethical matchmaking advocate, mentor, and industry innovator. Let's dive in.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we have a truly special guest, someone who's helping entrepreneurs, including service-based professionals like matchmakers, step into their power, align with their purpose, and achieve financial success without burnout. She's a financial coach, business strategist, and the founder of the Expansive CEO, where she helps leaders scale their businesses while staying aligned with their human design and gene keys. If you've ever struggled with pricing, profitability, or even feeling worthy of financial success, you don't want to miss this episode. So, welcome, Hannah Chapman.
Hi, Arlene. It's so good to be here. Thank you.
It's great to be here, to have you here. I know I was on your podcast and we had a lot of fun, but I couldn't wait for this episode, even though even though I'm still feeling a little sick. I couldn't wait to talk to you. I just went back to an old reading that I had on human design, and it was so amazing and so interesting. And I can't wait to hear how you're using this to do what you do. So tell me about the Expansive CEO. What is that all about?
Yeah. So thank you. Expansive CEO is actually my second company. It grew out of X Squared Wealth Planning, which is my financial planning firm, which is still going and doing its thing. And what happened was in X Squared, I started learning my own human design many years ago and was really just astonished at what it was doing for my life, for my business, for my relationships. And again, in X Squared, I started introducing human design to some of my clients. And it was again, this is very left brained, logical, like go by the numbers type industry, right? So I'm the woman who's bringing emotional depth and knowing yourself and all that to the table already. I was already feeling a little bit out there compared to other people in my space. And it was like, oh, I'm kind of scared to tell people that I'm using human design also and because my clients were having these amazing breakthroughs and like even more alignment in their business and making more money and making easier financial decisions, right? It was like I was seeing it happen. I was seeing it come to life. And so what really happened with Expansive CEO was that I decided I need to just let my whole self shine. I need
Mhm.
to be my whole self and put this out there in a bigger way. And so 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago, I decided to have my own like coming out party in the design world by saying like I'm going to do a month-long masterclass and we're going to talk about another piece. The gene keys are not the same as human design, but they work really well together, and talk about the prosperity sequence and talk
Mhm.
about these different points in our human design that really tell us more about who we are, how we connect with clients, how we connect with other people, what we're here to do in this world, and how we're here to connect with prosperity. Um, so that's all part of the prosperity sequence. And so I did this public master class. It was free, just bring people in. And from there, like people were so hungry for this information about how do I utilize these systems? A lot of people have heard of human design. They've maybe had their chart pulled. Um, and maybe they've had a reading done and it was just like a ton of information. You're like, oh, I don't know what to do with all of that. And what I found was that it's just like in my financial planning work, like it takes time to digest this information and to implement this information and to like do step by step, like walk through it. And so the process, that's what I really found is just like with the financial transformations that I'm helping people make, if we include the human design and the gene keys information, it's just um, another layer of getting to know yourself and to work with your genius rather than work against it. Feel like you're always doing things you don't want to do, or doing things that are difficult, or doing things the hard way, right? Like, no, let's go with the flow of who you really are instead.
So for people who don't know what human design is or gene keys, that one I've never heard of. So I'm curious to hear what that is. Because I find this stuff really fascinating. What little I know about human design, um, it really taught me a lot about myself. But I'd love to hear, for the audience, what are these things exactly?
Yeah, so human design is basically a synthesis of different mystical traditions that, the founder of human design, he basically had the inspiration of here's how all of these systems work together. And for me, I love that. My brain loves that. Even you can
Mhm.
tell from the financial planning work, right? Like I love bringing lots of information together and seeing how it all, like putting the puzzle together, seeing how it works. So I fell in love with it immediately. But it incorporates Western astrology is one piece of it. So it is based on your birth date, time, and place. It also incorporates the Hindu chakra system, if anyone's familiar with that. So there are 9 centers that are based on our 7 chakras. It also incorporates the Kabbalah tree of life. So we've got different centers that connect to each other, which is comes from the tree of life. And then the Chinese I Ching or the Tao Te Ching,
Mhm.
which are the 64 hexagrams. Um, that all life is built on, right? So there's numbers 1 through 64, and you'll see those on the chart. You'll see them mixed with these chakra centers and these channels and gates that connect each other. And then you've got your planet placements on the side as well. So it's again this synthesis of all these systems together, and that's what can be overwhelming for people,
Mhm.
I think, because you see it and it's just like, what is all this information? There's just so like fire hose. If you allow yourself to like, I don't know, try if you try to take it all in too quickly. That's why, hey, let's take it a step at a time. What are the important parts to really know first? And then the gene keys are actually a modern retelling of the I Ching. So
Mm.
it's really like if you get the Gene Keys book, I've got it literally right next to me. It's this big, it looks like a really thick encyclopedia. And it's, numbers 1 through 64. It takes all of the spirit of the original I Ching and um, yeah, just kind of not modernizes it, I wouldn't say. That's not the right way to say that, but expands on it in a way that shows us what's the shadow of this number, what's the gift of this number, and what's the siddhi, SIDDHI, or highest expression that we can experience in this lifetime. Um, and then those gene keys, the keys, quote unquote, are those like more really important placements in our natal chart.
I love how you said you and I have a lot of stuff in common. When I've spoken to you, you say a lot of the similar things. When I first got into matchmaking, when I was a matchmaker, I used to be a closeted matchmaker, and then I became a flaming matchmaker wherever I went. Like, because I went from such a serious corporate world in, the pharmaceutical industry to matchmaking, and it's crazy how people think it's hokey when it's such an important part of people's lives, right? To
Yeah.
have a partner and to meet the right partner. And I think I would love for you to share your beautiful story of your relationship, because you've been with your husband forever.
I
You're
have.
so young.
Yeah, I know. I'm 40, just for the record. So I met, the story is funny. Technically, my husband and I started dating our senior year of high school, like right before our senior year. We started really like hanging out and becoming friends in our junior year of high school. So I mean, I was literally 16 and he was 17 when we started hanging out. And then on my 17th birthday, we started dating. And so that was right at the beginning of our senior year of high school. But we had actually met each other. Like we have pictures and video together from the time we were in 6th grade, and we were both in the 6th grade honor band. We went to different schools, but like the whole city, we lived in the same city, and the city did an honor band, and we both made honor band. So I have this very vivid memory because he had bright blonde hair, like platinum blonde, and it was in a bowl cut because it was the 90s. Um, and he had an alligator skin uh, print trombone case. And so I remember, I have this memory of seeing this kid with white blonde hair with this alligator skin trombone case, like walking past. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that's him. That's my husband, Adam.
That is so cute. I love that. And it's rare, a lot, for people to have a sustainable marriage when you meet at such a young age. So I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that human design and all the things that you do to know thyself and know your partner and all that really helps, because then you mentioned something about being in flow. And what I realized when somebody did a reading for me, and actually I thought he was going to do an astrology reading, and this is going back to, like, I don't know, 2016, 2018. I had the good sense to record this whole thing. It was 2 hours, and at the time when he started talking to me about human design, he just completely caught me off guard, and I wasn't prepared for the information. And you know what they say, like the student has to be ready for the teacher. And I went back and listened to the 2 hours. I've listened to it like 5 times already. This guy's phenomenal. His name is Verdalus. And he was so on target, but it taught me about myself because I'm a projector. What are you in human design?
I'm a manifesting generator.
Okay, okay.
I have a lot. Projectors don't have that sustained energy. I have tons of energy.
Yeah, yeah. We get our energy we're only like 20% of the population,
Hmm.
and oh my god, the things that he said, and I was doing something different back then, and I went back and listened to it now, and what he said I should be doing, the oh my, it's so crazy. So I'm gonna do another reading at some point, but I find it fascinating. The thing that really stuck with me, though, was that as a projector, I need to wait to be invited.
Hmm.
And when you talk about being in flow, when you're just pushing an agenda, and for me, it just doesn't work. People need to invite me in, and I do get that all the time. I just need to be visible and be invited. But that was very interesting. But I'm just curious, how do you use this with financial planning and the expansive CEO? How does that come into play when it comes, with regard to finances and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So going back to my husband, actually, I think is a really good illustration of this point because again, we've been together now for 20, it'll be 24 years total. By the time by when August rolls around, it'll be our 24th dating anniversary, and we've been married for it'll be 19 years this year. And over that time, right, we've had many, the way that I feel is like we've had many different relationships
Hmm.
through that time. Like we've grown and changed in a lot of different ways. But one thing that I didn't know that I was experiencing, I didn't have words for what I was experiencing until I found human design and I learned about my type and I learned about his type. Now, he's super not into astrology at all, and that's totally fine. Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be for me to understand myself and for me to understand him better. Um, because as a manifesting generator, I have sacral authority. Sacral authority means I have very strong gut response. Uh,
Mm,
like hell yes or hell no.
no.
Right. And it's very visceral. Like I feel it in my gut. So when, anyone who's like, I have to follow my gut. Anytime I haven't followed my gut, I've regretted it, FYI.
Mhm.
But that was very strong for me. My husband, on the other hand, is an emotional manifester. He has emotional authority, which has to go through a wave. It has to, uh, where sacral authority is very quick, like it's an instant hit of knowing. The emotional authority has to think about it. It has to take time. someone with emotional authority makes an immediate decision, it is the wrong decision.
Mm,
Almost not necessarily all the time, but there is a much higher chance that you're going to make a decision that you regret if you make a decision quickly. And so what I didn't realize was happening throughout the first, 20 years of our marriage and our relationship was I would know my knowing, I would feel my gut knowing, and then he would be like, why are you so confident? Why or why not? Or what are the pros and cons? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I would feel that as not trusting me. Right? Why don't you
mm,
trust me? Why won't you listen to me? Why can't, like feeling like my balloon was being popped all the time.
yeah.
Right? And for him on the other side, if he gets pushed into a decision immediately, then it's like that is wrong for him. And he'll dig in his heels, and to not have to make a decision quickly, it really feels bad for him. And so when I learned this about us together, it was like such an aha moment. It felt I cried. I
Mm.
cried knowing this because I had been making myself wrong for a long time, right? Like I can't listen to my gut response. I have to go through the mental checklist of pros and cons of everything else, right? Like I have to do that because that's what's expected. And it was just such a relief to me to know that I can trust my gut if I can listen to it and feel it. And so then the next several years, I spent time like really getting to know like what's my truth? Where's my fire? Where's my passion? That gut yes, that hell yes is strong. It's like big for me. And I need to follow that over and over. And when my husband and I have to make a decision together, I know he needs time in
Yeah.
some he needs help. Not in that he doesn't need me to help him make a decision, but he might, when I'm making decisions for myself, he might have those questions like why this, why that. He's not he's not doing anything wrong to me either. It's just he's wrapping it around through his decision making process. And I tell this story because this is your authority, your decision making authority in human design is one of the most important things to learn about yourself. Um, and especially with couples. So when I'm working with couples, which I do a lot in financial planning, I work with couples all the time. Um, Having them talk about finances together, one can be very triggering anyway, right?
Yes.
There can be a lot of stress there. But then if they then learn that, oh, you guys have totally different decision making styles, and that's okay. Like we'll talk about it and they'll be like, "Oh my god, that's so true. Like remember when you did this and that?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, remember when you do this and that?" Right? Like they can see it in each other. And all it takes is awareness in order to be able to like give someone space to be able to make the right decisions for them and then make decisions together.
I could see how that would give you instant credibility when you're talking to a couple and you can tell just by their human design and acknowledge and validate, like, I know you. This is what you need, and it's cool. And I love that you're using this in your relationship as well, because to your point, it's once you know where people are coming from, you find that ease, and you no longer have this crazy, expectations, which is what creates frustration, right? Because people want something that they don't really understand, that the other person is not in that frame of mind, they're not capable of doing it. So I think it's amazing. And also finances, I mean, especially if you're dealing with couples, that seems to be like I don't know why, but there's a weird energy around couples sitting down and going through their finances together, and then you have to be in the middle of that. So I don't blame you for finding that thing, something outside of the whole, to just bring clarity.
It really, really helps. It really does because I mean, we know like statistics tell us, that finances are one of the biggest reasons that people get divorced, that the conflict happens around finances and then can lead very often to divorce. Um, and when you're dating, right? Like the joke there is that people will have sex before they'll talk about their money, right? Like
Mhm.
it's just
So true.
it's such a taboo topic. And I mean, it really is true. It really is true. And it can be hard to navigate bringing couples together. We're talking like in a matchmaking sense, bringing those financial discussions to the table and having like I stand in the middle as a mediator a
Mhm.
lot. And it's one of the things that people often say, when there is a tense situation or and we work through it and they get back to the other side and they're like, "Oh my gosh, so you're like a marriage counselor sometimes too, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah."
I would
I'm not licensed, but yet like that's what it feels like in the room many
Yeah.
times.
No, I think you definitely, if you're going to be really good at what you're doing, and when it comes to finances and dealing with couples, there's a lot of psychology involved, and this human design thing I can see as a way of helping to navigate that and being able to speak their language so that they listen and feel validated. I mean, validation's huge when it comes
Right.
to that kind of thing. So tell me about the expansive CEO and how does that work? Because we, as you know, I train professional matchmakers. These are all entrepreneurs for the most part that own their own businesses. And I'm a proponent of, let's make sure, with that industry, sometimes you have your ups and downs throughout the year, like a lot of entrepreneurs. And it's important, A, to manage your cash flow, but also to invest and make sure that you're doing something with your income to have something to show for it in the end. Because as an entrepreneur, you don't have that 401k unless you start something like that when you have a business, or all the things that you lose when you leave corporate America. And so it's really important to do that. And I'm assuming that this is part of what you do with the entrepreneurs, correct?
Absolutely. That's helping business owners create stability in
Mhm.
their finances is the bedrock of all of my business. Like X squared, expansive CEO, everything I do is like our our need for stability, security, right? We seek it out. And when we don't have that, it manifests in so many other ways in how we're showing up in our sales calls and how we're showing up for our clients, and how we are, invoicing, putting our pricing out there, right? All of these different things are touched by how we feel about money.
Mhm.
And so there again, there's this tie between how we're feeling and what we're doing with money. And so what I did when I created Expansive CEO, a piece of it was that, okay, a lot of my clients in X squared have money to invest, or their businesses are like doing really great. And they're like, I have all this extra cash flow. What do I do with it? Right. And we're doing like all the financial planning. But I was also then reaching a lot of people who needed to build those stability systems, right? They didn't have the financial systems yet. And they again maybe are making revenue but don't know where to put it, don't know how to save for their taxes, don't know how to pay themselves appropriately. That could look like they're stashing cash and never paying themselves, or they're not pricing their services appropriately to be able to pay themselves, right? So I was just noticing all of these things. I'm like, oh, well, we can teach, like, I can teach that.
Mhm.
That's just information that you need. So first is the intellectual information of here's how you set up your finances. Here's how you understand what it costs to live your life and to run your business. And then here's how you understand how to price your services in order to cover all of your needs, plus learn how to save for your taxes. Um, all of those aspects of, you know, the financial foundation of how do you create stability for yourself within, like you said, entrepreneurship, which can be a very ebb and flow
Mhm.
environment, right? Big months and nothing for some time, right? Like that's how it works for a lot of entrepreneurs. How do you create stability within that environment? That's a big, big piece of what I do in Expansive CEO.
What are some of the tips that you provide? And is there like a method that you follow? I'm trying to think of the name of the book that I read a few, like a few years ago, where he had all these different bank accounts that
Oh, profit first.
profit first.
Yep.
And then way back when, maybe before you were born, there was a company called, I think it was like A.L. Williams, and it was like pay yourself 10% first or something. I don't know. Like, what is there like a method or something that you recommend for entrepreneurs and how to manage their cash flow? And then I want to talk about like when should they hire and how to go about that. That's such a huge step for people to put somebody on payroll, and it's so nerve wracking. So,
Mhm.
what do you say on that?
Yes. So I really enjoy Profit First. Mike Michalowicz is
Hmm.
the author of that book. I recommended it many, many times. And I actually help my clients to implement it in certain ways. So I'm not a Profit First professional. There are specific, like you can go through training and whatnot and be listed on their website. I don't know if there's actually training, just paying a licensing fee maybe to be listed on the website as a Profit First professional. So I don't put myself out there in that regard because I do think that the amount of accounts that they typically use is overwhelming for most people. So what I've done is taken, from that system and distilled it down to what is actually most helpful for, especially for people who are solopreneurs or maybe have one or two employees, right? Like have a small firm. Um, because again, like having 15 to 20 different accounts is overwhelming. It's too much. But I have four, right? So I use a four account system for each of my businesses, and then I have my payment, my own owner's draw account is at a different bank, and then I have a tax savings account, right? Like I use the system myself
Hmm.
in this pared down way. And what it does, like the essence of the Profit First system, the reason I love it so much is that Mike Michalowicz's stated goal is to get entrepreneurs out of what he calls entrepreneurial poverty, which
Yeah.
is where you're paying everyone else, you're paying all the bills for your business, but you're not paying yourself. And so you're running this giant machine that's exhausting you, and you're not even able to pay your bills easily. You've got your credit cards are running up, right? And all of this. So that was the shift he wanted to help make, which really aligns with my heart as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in that system, in the like if you're in the 0 to $250,000 of revenue, like total revenue in that system, he says that you should be able to pay yourself 50% owner's pay, like right
Wow.
off the top. You should also be able to save 15% into a tax savings account and then pay yourself 10% in profit as well into a profit savings account with 30. So that leaves 30% that goes 35%. I think that would go into operating expenses. So that's going to be your subscriptions for, whatever you need, your marketing budget, um, uh, your bookkeeper, or whatever it is, your expenses for operating, that's going to be in that 35% range, or should be, right? So that's when people come to me and we start looking at it, what happens a lot of times is that somehow their expenses are way higher than that. They're
Mm.
like, there's no way I can pay myself that much, right? That's like not going to work. Or the profit might be 5% actually in that, yeah, because it's 30% opex, 5% to profit. But they can't see how that would work. So what do we do in that? Oh, well, we're going to look at that. We're going to look through, what are you spending money on? Where's your pricing, right? A lot of times I find it's underpricing versus cutting expenses. Like, we just need to change your pricing and your packaging, and that's going to elevate the income level to a point where now you can pay yourself appropriately. So that's huge, right? And then the piece that it builds in your tax savings, that's also huge, because for a lot of people, like you said, when you're in corporate, they take the taxes out for
Mm.
you, right? They take care of it. No one's taking care of your taxes for you anymore. You have to do it for you. Um, but with this system in place, you get to start seeing, okay, this is my target, these are my goals. So when you say, when is it time to hire, there's, you can look at that too. Like, oh, well, right now I've made, 300 or 350,000, and I've got excess income, we'll say in quotes. Uh, and I'm doing too much, right? I feel it. Like, usually you're going to feel that in your system that you're doing too much stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
You need to get stuff off your plate, or you're doing so much admin stuff that you're not able to take on as many sales calls as you want to take on, whatever that balance is. Or you're literally like, I just want to have more time. I don't want to be spending so much time doing all the stuff. I want a break. All right. Well, now let's look at your expenses. Maybe now your expenses are actually too low, quote unquote, too low, and you have room to bump them up. You have room in your expenses. You can increase your expenses to hire that assistant that you need, or hire that salesperson, to take those sales calls, right? And we can tell that by looking at the overall structure of your cash flow and your budget.
What percentage of your revenue should you consider for, staffing and employees? Like, what percentage of that would you say is appropriate?
That is, I feel like that's hard to estimate, just like not knowing more about a person's process or what their goals are.
Hmm.
Um, but as long as it fits within that, again, if you're in that zero to $250,000 range, fits within that 30% OpEx bucket, you don't want your staffing to be 50% of your revenue.
Right.
Like, that's way too much. We don't even really want it to be 30% of your revenue, because then you don't have room for the marketing, for, rent, if you have to pay rent, like all of those other expenses. Um, but people cost money as well, right? So maybe 10% is right, maybe 15% is right for your business. It's going to depend on the other factors, right?
So when you work with individuals who are entrepreneurs, do you give them a structure for what percentages of what they should be spending on different things so that they have a cohesive business? I mean, I'm sure there are trends like, whatever, on average, you should be spending X amount on marketing, or so people have permission or don't overspend, right? Because sometimes they're like, oh, I probably shouldn't spend that money. But yeah, maybe you should, because if you don't market yourself, or I don't want to pay a salesperson. Well, maybe you should, or you're gonna have to do all the damn sales yourself. Like, and how to structure this. Is that the kind of help that you provide, or is it strictly just letting them know where to invest their money, whatever excess money they have?
So in X squared wealth planning, we talk about investing, right? I cannot talk about investing in just like a pure expansive CEO contract,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be, safe
Separate, yeah.
and compliant. Um, if you are a client of X squared, we can talk about everything, right? So we
Right.
can go into the business, look at your, where you're spending money, what you're spending money on, how that aligns with your goals and what you really want to accomplish in any given year. And then also see how it ties to your personal wealth and personal finances, and then the investment piece, that can all be together. If we're strictly in expansive CEO and looking at the business coaching, human design coaching, expansive CEO program, any of that side, we are looking at, like, I want to see the details of your expenses. We're going to go through. We are going to comb through. We are going to look at everything. We're going to, if you have QuickBooks, we're going to look through your QuickBooks and see what's sticking out. And again, we're going to see how everything fits into that overall structure. Let's say you're making $500,000 a year in total revenue, so you've got a little bit bigger bucket, and your expenses should be around 40% total, right? So the bigger the revenue number, the bigger the expense percentage as well. All right, well, are you again, are you light there? Are you doing all the sales calls yourself and you're exhausting yourself and your expenses are at 25%? We have room to put that out there. On the other hand, sometimes I'll see people who also um, love to learn and love to have coaching and love to, all of those things. And then they're spending 40, 50% of their budget, of their total revenue on some of those expenses as well. And so a lot of times we'll work through that as well. So sometimes I'll have people say, I want to spend less, and so I'm going to use you as a buffer to Hannah, like, this opportunity is coming up. Can we talk through it just so I can, like, give myself like a minute, right? Rather than jumping into the next coaching program,
Yeah.
which is very, very common for entrepreneurs as well, partly because a lot of times it can be lonely in entrepreneurship. And so being part of a group, being part of a coaching program, sometimes that provides that camaraderie that we're looking for as well. So it's not to say that that's not, I fully support, endorse, have benefited immensely from coaching and masterminds and cohorts. And there's also the understanding, what your goals are and what's possible, feasible, appropriate for you at any stage, in your business. If you're okay taking on debt for it, that's great. If you're not okay taking on debt for it, then hey, we need to, like, talk about what that looks like, and you need to be able to have offers that are going to make the money in order for you to be able to pay that debt.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm a big believer of continuing education. I think that people need to do something every year to expand their knowledge, but not, going. Well, sometimes, I have had people go into debt to learn something and then quickly come out of debt because of what they learned. But
Right.
making those decisions sometimes is, hard because you don't know. Like one time I invested $15,000 on a program about speaking, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think this was worth it, but okay, I'll bite the bullet. I'm like, you gotta, if I want people to invest in me, I have to be investing too, I think, energetically. One of the challenges I face as a coach, someone who trains matchmakers, is sometimes I find that people have like money mindset issues. And so typically when you start out as a matchmaker, as a solopreneur, and you're doing everything, you're doing the sales, you're dealing with the clients, etc., they are not comfortable with sales. And sales is, that's the bloodline of a business, and it's not hurting people, it's actually helping them usher into your business so that they can get the help that they need. And also with pricing, they price their services so low that they burn out, because how many clients can you take just because you want to be at that price point, when in fact you need to be at a different price point? And so do you work with people about how to get their money mindset right, and how does human design and all this other stuff that you're using come into play? I would imagine that might help.
Oh, yes, a ton. And even more, I would say, on the money mindset side, even more than the human design aspect, that can give us some really powerful insight into ourselves in a lot of ways. But I feel the money mindset piece a lot of times comes from our childhood and from our previous experiences with money,
Mhm.
and from our parents and from our grandparents, our caregivers, whoever it was that raised us, um, and took, took that role in our life from 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21. So those first developmental cycles of our life. And so one of the things that I started doing several years ago is what I call a money story meditation.
Mhm.
And this is actually available on my website as well. This is available on the Expansive CEO website, because it's so powerful and impactful, to go in. So it's a guided meditation that I lead people through, to go in and talk to your inner child at different points for different reasons, and doing it in this way of, like, finding out, what do you know about money? What do you feel about money? Do you have the things that you want or need? And if yes or no, why not? Right. So there's in that particular meditation that's on the website, go in and talk to your 10-year-old self. And what people come out of from that meditation, come out with is this like this beautiful realization of, oh, this was what my story was with money. And now I'm seeing it show up again. I'm seeing it show up in all these different ways in my business now, whether it's being afraid to sell, being afraid to speak up for yourself, being afraid that, money, there's just never enough money. And so there's just never enough. And it doesn't matter how much there is, it's just not ever going to be enough. Right. Or I had a client who, her dad was well off. But it felt like he bought her things instead of giving her love.
Hmm.
And so there was, like there's this connection of like money equals buying love from people, and it doesn't feel good. And it's when we see it for what it is, that's when we can start to dismantle the structures that we've created around ourselves, right? That tell us that we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we're not loved, right? It all goes back to those main stories. But when we talk about money in particular,
It's
it really, really latches on, it stays inside.
It's so funny how those things come up all the time when it comes to relationships, money, all of it. It's like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And, really talking yourself out of those belief systems that are going to keep you stuck. I'm curious, though, in terms of pricing, given that you work with so many different entrepreneurs and different types of businesses, how do you determine where they need to price their service at? Like, do you do market research? Like, do you help them with that, or give them guidance as far as how to raise their prices, for example?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Um, I don't know everything about every industry, right? So like right off the bat, I don't claim to be an expert in all service industries, but I have a pretty good idea of baseline, what different things are in different areas. It depends on what area of the country you're in, or, if you're in a different country, like there's there are norms, right? I have norms in the financial planning world, and my prices are above that, right? I am a premium rate in financial planning, and I know that. And why do I do that? Because that's where I know my energy matches,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is the product that I'm putting out. I know it's a premium product. How do I know? Because I know my industry really, really well. And I know how much of my own time, effort, love, energy is being poured into this, and what it's going to lead to on the other side for this client, right? So I know my pricing is premium for my industry, and I'm good with that, and I make the sales that I want to make.
I love
Or
it.
yeah, for something like matchmaking, but it took me a while to get there. It took me
Mm-hmm.
a while to get there. It took experimentation, and it took having my prices be too low for a long time, and exactly what you said, like taking on a lot of clients and then being like, I cannot do this many plans at once. It's too much. I need to shift, right? So I need to be doing, because I was doing the same amount of work for a lot less money. And so I raised my prices, felt how that felt, like, still not, it feels better, but not quite right. Raised them again, and have kind of landed. And then I also overcorrected for a while. I went too high for a while, and I got a lot of no's. So I would have sales calls and no, 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 over and over again. And that was, for me, it was like, okay, I've gone too high. I need to correct back. And so I've landed at a place that feels good for me. And so we can do the same. There are a few ways to go about pricing. One of them is, one, we need to know what your life costs. So we do, like, we don't just base it on absolutely nothing at all. We need to know what your expenses are. We need to know what it costs to pay your mortgage, buy food, buy clothes, do whatever you need for your kids, right? We need to know what your expenses are. We also need to know what your base business expenses are, if any. For some of us, especially a solopreneur in matchmaking, there's maybe not a lot of business expenses, might be minimal.
Surprised.
Right, it's true. Like, it depends. Like, if you've got subscriptions to CRMs and different things and Zoom and all, like, it can all add up.
Mhm.
But you're probably not, unless you have a team, you're probably not at like 10, 15, $50,000 a month of business expenses. It's probably more so that your life costs money, right? So let's say you need $15,000 a month to pay all your expenses, your life expenses and your business expenses. All right, well, we need to look at that then, and we need to back into how you're going to create that amount of money plus some, right? Because we don't make just $15,000. You have to be able to save for your taxes.
Taxes.
You got to be able to save for retirement, right? You've got to do all these other things. So how do we create $25,000 to $30,000 a month in order to make that possible? That's where, all right, okay, so let's look at your services. How much can you work? Not can you, how much do you want to work? How
Yeah.
many clients can you serve well at one time? Right. So we're going to start looking at it in some of these different ways. We're going to look at it from several different angles. That's not the only angle, but that is one angle that we need to look at. And then the next angle is, yeah, what are the norms around you? What are other people charging? Like, let's have a decent idea. What are you going to do that's different or special to differentiate you? If you want to be a premium provider, what makes you premium? Where's your special sauce
Mm-hmm.
that you can charge more for because you're the only one that does it, or you do it in a certain way, or you have a certain special niche or network? These are all the different things that we can look at to understand. And then from there, let's say that means, okay, you're going to charge, $5,000 for your services. What does that look like then? What's that going to, and how do you feel saying that? If you say to someone, okay, well, it's going to be $5,000 for this contract to work with me for this long, then are you going to be able to say that? Are you going to throw up in your mouth a little when you say it? Like,
Good luck finding somebody that charges that little, because it's a lot of work. Matchmaking is a very tough business.
yeah. Well, and then in that case, maybe it is. If it's what's a more norm? Like, do people charge 15, 20, $30,000?
Yeah, depending on the area that you're in, but it's usually a lot. It's usually more than 5,000, because if you really think about it, matchmaking is one of those services where someone maybe reaches the age of 40 and they're single, and they're going to hire a matchmaker for 6 months. And within that 6 month period, it is the job of the matchmaker to find qualified people to bring forward to this individual. And for every one person that they introduce to them, they may have interviewed 10 or 20 people and only one person was qualified. And so it's a lot of energy that goes into bringing the right people forward. Now, they can't promise you that you're going to have a successful relationship, but they can bring you qualified people, which is what you're hiring them for. And it takes a lot of work, and you do pay recruiters and you pay referral fees. I'm going to talk more about that at some point so people understand what matchmaking really is. And yeah, so, and you want whoever is working for you, you want them to be paid well enough that they are whole and that they can, not have to take more clients than they need to, so they can give you the proper service that you deserve. I think anybody wants that. If I'm gonna hire someone, I want them to be okay to do the work that they're being hired to do. So yeah, it's very
Right.
interesting. Um, there's so much I want to talk to you. I mean, I can't believe it's been an hour already, almost. Okay, like this is crazy. So we're definitely going to have you back on the show. But before we go, is there any one final piece of advice that you want to share, particularly with matchmakers, about just anything, like how to step into their full power and as business owners? because what you just shared just now about pricing, I think people are going to go back and listen to that and take notes and go back and listen again. But is there anything else you want to share?
Oh gosh. The thing that always comes up for me is just this knowing that there is enough, right? There are so many people in this world there, and for matchmakers specifically, there's so many people that are looking for love and for relationships and who need help with that. And this knowing, this deep knowing that there is enough for everyone, right? There's enough for you to experience beautiful prosperity and abundance. That's there. That's there for you. There's um, nothing in the universe, right, that's telling you that's not true. And so in all of the ways that might come up to feel like that's not true for you, those are all those places, those money stories where we can lovingly look at that and love it back into wholeness, to know that, hey, if it's true that the universe is abundant and the universe is giving enough for everyone and it's ever expanding, then that's true for me too. And all I have to do is figure out how to get out of my own way.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And where can listeners go to learn more about you, get financial breakthroughs, and work with you?
Well, my main website that will take you everywhere you need to go is hannahrchapman.com, HANNAHR Chapman, CHAPMAN.com. So that'll, direct you to Expansive CEO. It'll direct you to X Squared as well. And if you go onto the Expansive CEO website, I have a special offer and code for anyone who's listening to this particular podcast. You can go to the Money Story Meditation. It's normally $11. But if you're listening now and you want to go get that for yourself, you can get it for free if you use the code Matchmaker Mentor. And you'll just put it in the cart and you'll be able to download that and start to open up to some of your own money stories. So I really wanted to offer that to your audience so they can experience it for themselves.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hannah. I really appreciate all your wisdom that you shared today. And I know the audience is going to really value everything that you've shared. And to our listeners, if you love this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody else who can benefit from this message, because it was so good. Thank you again, Hannah. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you for tuning in to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow matchmakers and friends. For more resources, training, and inspiration, visit lovepromastermind.com and follow us on social media. Remember, matchmaking isn't just a career, it's a calling. Let's keep building connections, changing lives, and growing together. Until next time, stay inspired and keep matching.